detecting a massive object emerging from hyperspace.
I love Star Wars, but not every Star Wars movie is great. That much is a fact. I can enjoy every Star Wars movie. Really. Even some of the ones that aren't maybe as good as others. Keep in mind all of this is opinion-based, and it might not be the same as yours. At number 11, in our last place, is a movie that it's... I'm really gonna get a lot of for this. The Last Jedi was, at first when I watched it, disappointing. Then I watched it again, and it just was mediocre. And then, honestly, the more I watch this movie, the more and more I dislike it. Luke's character, the Canto Bight scene, Rey gaining all of her powers through touching Kylo Ren, it's all kind of ridiculous. I mean, if that was the case, I mean, why didn't every single Jedi Master just touch a youngling and then, boom, they're just as powerful? It's just stuff like this that doesn't make sense. The more and more I talk about this movie, the more and more I just want to break my DVD copy of it. Yes, I actually went out and bought it. Let's get on to some better stuff. Coming in at number 10, we have Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Again, this is kind of like the Last Jedi. You know, the hate for this movie is pretty strong, and I find myself over the years, I've gotten a bit sympathetic for this movie. You know, it's got a great duel. It's got an amazing cast, really, if you think about it. Like, Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson, Natalie Portman, Keira Knightley, how do you pronounce, whatever. Ray Parks. I mean, this movie has an amazing cast. It had an amazing premise, but it just didn't live up to the hype that I think 15 years of waiting can generate amongst fans. It had kind of the cards stacked against it, and honestly, while I might be able to find enjoyment in it, it's certainly not a good movie and definitely is on the lower half of the spectrum of Star Wars movies. In at number 9 is the Clone Wars movie. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that the Clone Wars show that followed this movie is amazing. Worth every watch. I think every one of you should go watch it. If you live in America, you can actually watch it on Netflix right now. But if you're not in America, I'm not entirely sure. This movie was originally meant to be the first couple episodes of Season 1, but George Lucas, behind the scenes, was like, let's make a movie. And then it was so. But it was edited badly together. The animation is bad. The storyline just... It would have worked for several episodes, but trying to thread it all together into one single movie just seems a little ridiculous. I mean, you can clearly tell that the first half hour of the movie is meant to be its own standalone episode, which introduces Ahsoka and just kind of lays the groundwork, but instead it's the first several scenes of a movie, which doesn't really work well for it. At number 8, we have Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. This movie kind of has a lot of the same flaws that The Phantom Menace had. It's got some clunky dialogue, it's got bad directing, but it's also got a really bad love story. Nonetheless, the action is intense. The last, 45 minutes of it, everything that's on Geonosis, is incredibly entertaining, and it sets up the conflict of the Clone Wars well, something that we first heard of in 1977 in A New Hope. However, the enjoyment that it generates in the last 45 minutes can't make up for its bad dialogue and glaring plot holes that occur throughout the rest of the movie. It's just a fact that this movie isn't as good as the others. It's certainly enjoyable, and you can just sit down and watch it. I love the Geonosis scenes. In fact, this movie, at one point, when I was younger, was my favorite Star Wars movie just because I loved everything that went on Geonosis. Now, though, if I take a step back and look at the movie as a whole, I can tell it leaves a lot to be desired. Coming in at number 7 is Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
Ironic.
Now, this movie does have a lot of flaws. It's seen as a beat-for-beat remake of A New Hope, and it honestly is. A lot of the plot points are the same. The characters really just feel like carbon copies of the original trilogy, but this movie did set up a lot of the future movies. In fact, I can honestly say I was incredibly excited to see Episode 8 after I watched Episode 7. Renewed hope in the Star Wars franchise came after this movie, and I was certainly a lot more excited to see Episode 8 after 7 than I was 9 after 8. In at number 6 is Episode 6, Return of the Jedi.
Ironic.
This movie is great, but it is the worst movie of the original trilogy. That much I can't deny. The ending scene is much like Attack of the Clones. The last 45 minutes or so are absolutely amazing. The emotion is there, the intensity is there, the action is non-stop, but I can't deny that the beginning scene, while entertaining, feels a little pointless, and just the whole point of the action is just to get Han Solo. As much as that's entertaining, in the grand scheme of the movie, it feels a little pointless. Now, of course, the middle of the movie is probably where all of my flaws go to. There's a good bit of action spread around here and there, but ultimately, once you get to the Ewoks, it all just kinda grinds to a halt. The movie seems to stop entirely. Any bit of intensity, action, or suspense is just stopped, so we can spend 30 minutes with some cuddly teddy bears. In at number 5, we have Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, I know that not many people saw this, so if you're part of like the 2% of the population of Earth that actually went and saw this movie, then you know that this movie is actually super entertaining. It's actually an action-packed, super fun ride. Seeing Han Solo was amazing. While The Last Jedi, the first 10 minutes of the movie, kind of took me out of it and made me not think this movie was very good, the first 2 minutes of Solo put a smile on my face and told me that this was going to be a fun ride. And the twist at the end with Maul was certainly interesting. I know that a lot of people don't like it because it feels like it's kind of shoehorned into the movie, but I personally find it to make perfect sense within the confines of the Star Wars saga and with Maul's character. So seeing him in Solo was entertaining. And the Kessel Run was one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars, like, altogether. Coming in at number 4, we have Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Easily my favorite movie of the Disney era of Star Wars. This movie just has it all. It was a love letter to the original trilogy. George Lucas himself said he loved the movie. And honestly, who can blame him? I'm hard-pressed to find any flaws in this movie. Perhaps you could say that the character is a little one-dimensional, but, you know, they all die at the end, and the whole point of this was meant to be kind of action-driven and a build-up to A New Hope. And for every bad scene in this movie, there seems to be dozens of amazing scenes. Let's all not forget that that end scene in the hallway with Darth Vader is one of the best scenes in Star Wars to date. And this movie is definitely one of the best Star Wars movies to date. Coming in at number 3, we have Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith is very easily the best movie in the prequel trilogy. Whereas other movies failed, this movie succeeds. This movie has just about everything a Star Wars fan can want. In fact, it's probably the Star Wars movie I've seen the most out of the entire saga. And I know that there's a lot of people that are going to be a little upset that I put this movie above Episode 6, but honestly, when I look at everything, we traded Wookiees for Ewoks, we traded Darth Sidious for Emperor Palpatine, and as much as you might want to say, I actually like Sidious better in 3 than I do in 6. And as much as I love the duel at the end of Episode 6, it is hard to beat. There has not been a duel since that I think has topped the duel on Mustafar between Anakin, or I guess he's Darth Vader now, versus Obi-Wan. And that speech at the end that Obi-Wan gives him is just amazing and heartbreaking. The music in this movie, too, is also just phenomenal, and it really makes it deserving of the number 3 spot. In at number 2, we have Episode 4, A New Hope. This movie set off the entirety of the saga. Without it, we wouldn't have anything else. And I know that doesn't mean that it should be number 1. Like, that alone does not make it the best. You know, in an ideal saga, the worst movie would be the first one, but it would still be good. But that's just not the case. They kind of struck oil here. It was the first Star Wars movie I ever saw, and I think it should be the first Star Wars movie any Star Wars fan ever sees. And coming in at number 1, the best Star Wars movie, according to me, is Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, come on, guys, what did you expect? Like, if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I am in love with this movie and just about everything. The movie is phenomenal, not just going off George Lucas's creation in Episode 4, but expanding it with new planets, new cities, the Empire's vast array of weaponry. And I know there's been this false rumor spread around by Rian Johnson that, oh, when this movie came out, it was super polarizing, you know, to strengthen his own standpoint on his movie, The Last Jedi. That is completely false. Empire Strikes Back is an amazing movie through and through. It was in 1980,